Well, looks like I got an opportunity to make a video, so I'm gonna jump on it while I can. And this was a video I got the idea for. Probably been a week or two now, probably about 2 weeks. Where if you're scrolling down your Facebook and you see somebody, like maybe a page you're following, and they call out a false teacher, you'll read through the comments and you'll see a bunch of whiny people talking about, well, why can't we all just get along? Why is there gotta be so much division and stuff like that? I'm not sure these people, I'm not going to question if they're real Christians or not. That's not for me to do, I reckon, but they obviously don't know the Bible. They obviously don't know the gospel. Because if you know the gospel, you know when someone is not preaching, when they're preaching some other gospel that they made up. And, I don't have to name off for you the popular ones that people love that do it all the time, because I'm sure you know who they are. But, I'm just going to read some Bible, because I do it too. I call out false teachers when I see them. I ain't afraid to do it. I don't, if someone is perverting the gospel, somebody needs to speak up, say something. Because the gospel they're preaching is going to lead people to hell, not heaven. But in 2 John chapter 7, where Apostle John was writing this, his letter to the elect lady. We don't know her name, but that's who he referred to her as. And it says in verse 7, "For many deceivers are entered into the world, who confess not that Jesus Christ is come in the flesh. This is a deceiver and an antichrist. Look to yourselves, that we lose not those things which we have wrought, but that we receive a full reward. Whosoever transgresseth, and abideth not in the doctrine of Christ, hath not God. He that abideth in the doctrine of Christ, he hath both the Father and the Son." And here's the kicker right here. "If there come any unto you, and bring not this doctrine, receive him not into your house, neither bid him Godspeed. For he that biddeth him Godspeed is partaker of his evil deeds." So, John is telling the lady, who is obviously a good Christian woman, and we get the impression that whenever, preachers traveled around in them days, that's what they did, spreading the gospel like they were supposed to do. And they came into town and needed somewhere to stay, not really a Holiday Inn Express there or anything. So they would stay at the house of other believers. So the idea we get here is that this lady was well known for welcoming in preachers to stay at her house while they were in town preaching. So John's just warning her, if somebody comes into town, they might be saying they're Christian, but they're preaching a different gospel, and don't let those people in your house, because you're just bidding them Godspeed. In other words, you're helping them to do something that's wrong, which is kind of how I feel about Christians who are like, oh yeah, well, Joel Osteen, he says some things that I don't agree with, but he's really inspirational. His book is really inspirational, and his quotes. No, leave all that crap alone He is an antichrist, as he just pointed out. And I think some Christians get the idea that just because somebody else is a false teacher, that we should just let them do their thing. If you don't believe in their thing, just let them do their... No, don't let them do their thing. They're perverting the gospel. And in Ephesians 5, verse 11, where Paul says, "And have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them." Reprove them. Don't just sit there and be like, "Oh, well, that's not really the gospel," but just let him do his thing. He's making people happy and what? No. I'm sorry, I just can't do that. I can't. It's the same way. Think of it this way. Think you wrote something. Say you wrote a book. And it was a top-selling book. Did great. And then somebody else wrote a book, and it was just like your book, except they changed a few parts of it. Would you not be upset about that? I know I would. So, God has put forth this gospel that we're supposed to spread around. The good news. That's what gospel means. The good news that Christ died. He was God incarnate. He was the Son of God. He lived a perfect life. He died for our sins. And he rose up on the third day. Those are some things you can't deny if you're going to be a Christian. So when someone comes along and is preaching something else, you can't. It's hard to be quiet about that because it just aggravates me, because this is the gospel that saves you, or that leads to your salvation, gets you there. And someone is perverting it, then that leads me to believe that the salvation they have is not real salvation. But they might not know any better. Because, it's like I know I love metaphors, I'm sorry. I just have to deal with it for a minute. Hang on. Sorry about that. But it's like some people have related the gospel to medicine. Say we've been saved, we have the gospel, we have the good news to share to people, to a dying world that's sick. They're sinners, they're sick, they're headed to hell, they're headed for death. We have the cure in the gospel. And it's not right for us not to give it to them. That would be wrong. But what also would be wrong was if somebody with a false gospel. So someone's dying of, whatever, and they have medicine, but it's not the medicine that's going to help them. But they make them believe it is. You know what I'm saying? Like if you went to the doctor and you had some whatever wrong with you that was life-threatening, and he gave you a prescription for something, like, here, take this and this will help you, but it's not the medicine for what you have. Or maybe it's even something that makes what you have worse. So that's another thing that aggravates me about false teachers, and that's why we should be calling them out. And that's why we should not be bidding them Godspeed. We should not be buying their books. We should not be sharing their quotes on Facebook. I don't care how inspirational it is. And sometimes there'll be one of these, mainline preachers that I like myself. I listen to his stuff and I like what he has to say myself. And then I'll figure out later on, after some time, because not all the time, if they're really good, not all the time can you immediately identify a false teacher. Because that's the whole point of being a false teacher, is just a lot of truth with a little bit of lies sprinkled into it. So it could be a while before you identify one. But when I do, it's disappointing because I like the guy, but he'll say something about something that I know this Bible don't say, and I'll just have to be done with it. But so it might take you a while before you figure out somebody's a false teacher. And you might have, I got some books at the house right now I need to get rid of because I didn't know when I bought them. Yeah, I found out later. Glad I didn't read them. But yeah, it could take you a while to figure out. But if you know there's somebody's a false teacher, I try to tell people all the time on my Facebook and whatnot. It's sad when you try to tell people and then you see them post the Joel Osteen's quote. You're like, did you not hear a word I said? But, that's just people. But I try to call them out when I see them. I just want you to understand, if they're not preaching this Bible, then they're preaching the wrong thing. And don't buy their books. Don't share their quotes. Don't do anything that would help them to further the false gospel that they're presenting. Just don't do it. But this is what aggravates me about seeing these people on Facebook comment when someone calls out false. Why can't we all just get along? Why is there so much division in the church? And because these people aren't the real church. That's why they're called false teachers. They're not real Christianity. So don't lump them in with the rest of it. We're trying to cut the cancer out. Don't enable it. But anyway, my video for today. I ain't done one in a while, so I might be a little bit rusty on it. But yep. If you're in the area of Clay County, where I live, feel free to drop by at Grace Missionary Baptist Church on Springbank Road Wednesday night if you want to see a special live performance of this stuff you watch all the time. I'll be teaching a Bible study on Wednesday night. And I got all my notes for that finished up last night, so that's mainly the reason I'm doing this video today, because otherwise I'd be working on that now. But that's all I got for today. So, till next time, take up your cross, carry on.